Back in the day when I did ministry for a living, I did something with my teens um, that was at least somewhat altruistic. We didn't do it often. In fact, this was the only time I can remember really doing something like this. So it ain't a brag. But we decided to collect winter gloves and give them to the homeless in New York City. We did a big donation campaign for the gloves, bought them, and saddled up to hit the big time. And I remember two girls who came along for the trip mainly because they wanted to see the Big Apple, right? They wanted to, yeah, let's go to the city. It'd be cool, right? All right, that's fine. Okay, we can deal with that. Um, and I knew these girls to be a couple of the beautiful people, right? Popular among their peers, good looking, generally self-absorbed, like most attractive teenage girls are. And I was very curious to see how they would react to the project. So I put them in my group when we split up. I just wanted to see this, and we split up into several small groups of 5 or 6. I put these couple of girls in my group, and we headed out to give out these gloves. And funny story is that was about the time Giuliani was in office down there, and I was really frustrated to find the man did a great job helping the homeless find proper shelter. Whether you agree with him, disagree, he really got a lot of police out on the street and started really enforcing loitering laws and that sort of thing, and getting homeless people off the street and into shelters. And I'm not saying he did that altruistically. He did it for tourism purposes, really. I think. But anyway, that's beside the point. I digress. But you could hardly find these people in Midtown, where the tourists hang out, where we were at. And we were trying to help. Right, we walked for what seemed like hours, and it was very cold. And if you've ever been in New York City when it's cold, the wind comes just whipping right down those streets. And the fact that the wind has to go around those buildings increases how windy it is. It's just brutal. And these girls were darting glances of sheer hatred toward me, and frequently were whispering to each other what I'm sure were complaints. About being there. And I started to get kind of pissed. I was like, come on, God, give us some homeless people freezing out here in the street so I can see how these stuck-up girls react to it. Yeah, real altruistic on my part, I know. Anyway, we finally came upon a group of homeless people, just a grip of them hanging out around the shelter. I don't know what was going on, but they were all hanging out around the shelter outside of it. And I said to my group, here's our chance, guys. Let's go. So we rushed over and gave out the supply of our gloves to these men and women on the street. And after all was said and done, it was really an amazing experience. All of them were extremely gracious to us, thanking us for the gloves. Many of them were trying on the gloves and right then and there. And it was funny to see how our nice new ski gloves, looked on these unshaven, smelly homeless people, but they were thrilled to have them. I would imagine most of them hadn't owned anything new in quite some time. We shook hands with them and we parted. We walked down the street to meet back with the rest of the group, and what I saw then was pretty amazing. These hotty-toddy high school girls were just weeping and speechless. And of course, they never admitted anything to me about what was happening inside of them and their souls, and they really didn't have to. I knew. And what's more is it was amazing to see these girls begin to change right before my eyes. Starting that day, they stopped being snotty to people and snubbing everyone but the quote in crowd. And they actually started to reach out in friendship to people they never really had before. They began wanting to become more and more involved in what we did at church. They started taking notes during my sermons. Well, I can't confirm that, but it transformed them just from that one experience of serving and meeting the needs of others. Why? Well, I didn't know then, but I realize now that the experience awakened a small part of what they were created to do, what we've been talking about. It awakened this piece of our core being, this foundation really of our core being, that we need to serve and meet the needs of others. And I believe that's all it takes for us to start down the path of redemption. like Yoda says about the dark side, once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny, right? Consume you it will. And that's what I saw with these girls. They just took one little step. Their motives were out of whack, but didn't matter, because they took one little step, and God honored that and began to move them down this path. One decision to say, you know what, I'm going to show up on the serve day at the church this time. I'm going to tell my single mom neighbor that I'll pick the kids up from school this time. I'm going to find something, anything, where I can give of myself and hope against hope. I get nothing back for it, just nothing. And what we'll find is we get everything back, 100 times what we gave, because it feeds our souls. Our souls at our soul's deepest level. Just like with the farmer in Field of Dreams. He did all this stuff, not really seeking anything, and he finally kind of asked, what's in it for me? And the ghost of his favorite baseball player says, is that why you did this, for you? And he was kind of left stunned, and then to find out that it was something that his soul needed deeply. One last story here of a church who spends too much money on buildings, too much money on land, and too much money on sound equipment, but a church who is getting the idea of serving. My cynical little introduction there. I won't name the church, but I actually used to attend there, and all the backbiting aside with, my opinions on buildings and church and all this stuff, I've got nothing but love for them. Good bunch of folks. They were very gracious to me and my family while we were there, and their true heart and soul really shows in this story. Mark was out on an HVAC repair call when he saw the family at the roadside by the local Walmart. A husband, a very pregnant wife, and a toddler. The husband was wearing a sign that said, "No food," which proved to be about the limit of his English abilities. Mark's always had a heart for folks in trouble, and with a businessman's acumen, he can sum up the situation and pick out the shysters pretty quickly, so he pulled over to see what he could do. When they realized they couldn't communicate without translation, one of Mark's employees, a Spanish speaker, came over to help. They got the story out of the father. They were down on their luck, homeless, hungry, pregnant, out of gas, tired, and very dirty. Some customers at Walmart had already stopped to give them some canned goods and staples, but they had nowhere to wash, cook, eat, or rest. So Mark called the church to ask what resources we knew about to help the family get some shelter and assistance. We started making some connections, and one of our bilingual pastors volunteered to translate or pastor as he needed. But Mark didn't wait for, quote unquote, the church to come to the rescue. Mark decided that he was the church. He was the body of Christ right then and there. So he and his crew filled up the family's beat up car with gas and took them into McDonald's to buy them all a meal. In the meantime, another customer saw their no food sign and talked to them about homeless shelters and resources in the Latino community. They called a homeless shelter in the area to make arrangements, and after the much needed meal, sent their friends off on the next step of their journey. As Mark tells it, it was so touching. The wife kept grabbing my hand while her son and husband ate their meals and simply said, "Gracias." Our church's list of values on our bulletin cover came into play that day big time. God first, grace-filled, grow family, give freely, go forth. Mark and his crew embodied all five that day. But there are times when the body of Christ can do more together than we can alone. And in a few weeks from now, our missions team is offering a wonderful way to go forth and be grace-filled in our community. It's the All-Church Serve Day on Saturday, October 5th, where we'll start out for breakfast and prayer at the church building and then spread out for the morning to be the face of Christ and his hands too around the metro. Sign up as an individual, a couple, a family, or as a life group. I, your humble pastor, and my wife are talking with the kids this week about where we want to serve, and I hope you'll have the same talk around your kitchen table this week.
Wait till it's unfurled, it'll go down in history.